Good morning. So I'm just gonna read a little something from the book Art and Fear by David Bayles, and I'm gonna start here where it says talent. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump right in. Let's go. Talent, in common parlance, is what comes easily. So sooner or later, inevitably, you reach a point where the work doesn't come easily, and it's just as you feared. Wrong. By definition, whatever, you have exactly what you need to produce your best work. There is probably no clearer waste of psychic energy than worrying about how much talent you have, and probably no worry more common. This is true even among artists of considerable accomplishment. Talent, if it is anything, is a gift, and nothing of the artist's own making. This idea is hardly new. Plato maintained that all art is a gift from the gods, channeled through artists who are out of their mind. Quite literally, in Plato's view, when making art. Plato, however, is not the only philosopher on the block. While his description correlates well with the functioning of the oracle at Delphi, idiots, savants, and certain TV evangelists, it's difficult to reconcile with the most real-world events. Oh, I so want to tell you about my experience at the Oracle of Delphi. I was there many years ago, but I think, I did share a little bit about that in a video I made a while ago. But it was okay. I'm not going to go into that, but it was incredible. If you ever get the chance to go to Greece, don't only go to the islands, go inland, go to Delphi, it's just incredible. The atmosphere is just something else. I really, encourage that. So I'll just, I'm not going to go on a tangent now, so I'll just carry on. Were talent a prerequisite, then the better artwork, the easier it would... Were talent a prerequisite, then the better artwork, the easier it would have been to make. The better the artwork. Gosh, mistakes in the morning here. It would have been easier to make. But alas, the fates are rarely so generous. For every artist who has developed a mature vision with grace and speed, countless others have laboriously nurtured their art through fertile periods and dry spells, through false starts and breakaway bursts, through successive and significant changes of direction, medium, and subject matter. Talent may get someone off the starting blocks faster, but without a sense of direction or a goal to strive for, it won't count for much. The world is filled with people who were given great natural gifts, sometimes conspicuously flashy gifts, yet never produce anything. And when that happens, the world soon ceases to care whether they are talented. That is so true. We need to fix that, I think. Even at best, talent remains a constant, and those who rely upon that gift alone without developing further peak quickly and then soon fade into obscurity. Examples of genius only accentuate that truth. Newspapers love to print stories about 5-year-old musical prodigies giving solo recitals, but you barely read about one going on to become a Mozart. The point here is that whatever his initial gift, Mozart was also an artist who learned to work on his work and thereby improved. In that respect, he shares common ground with the rest of us. Artists get better by sharpening their skills or by acquiring new ones. They get better by learning to work and by learning from their work. They commit themselves to the work of their hearts and act upon that commitment. So when you ask, then why doesn't it become more easy for me? The answer is probably because making art is hard. What you end up caring about is what you do, not whether the doing came hard or easy. Then there's a little block. Inside of it, it says, a brief digression in which the authors attempt to answer or deflect an objection. Question. Aren't you ignoring the fact that people differ radically in their abilities? Answer: no. Question: but if people differ and each of them were to make their best work, would not the more gifted make better work and the less gifted less? Answer: yes. And wouldn't that be a nice planet to live on? Okay. Then it continues to say, talent is a snare and a delusion. In the end, the practical questions about talent come down to these. Who cares? Who would know? And what difference would it make? And the practical answers are nobody, nobody, and none. I think I'll continue to the next one. This, the heading is perfection. And that is a topic that I think is very important to discuss. I've actually worked it into many conversations, although, I can do that more. Because, I'm not going to elaborate now, but I'm just going to read because I'm interested to see what this says. But perfection is tied to perception, most definitely, and to a lot of other things. And I'm just going to read. Okay. Perfection. The ceramics teacher announced on opening day that he was dividing the class into 2 groups. All those on the left side of the studio, he said, would be graded solely on the quantity of work they produced. All those on the right solely on their quality. His procedure was simple. On the final day of class, he would bring in his bathroom scales, and weigh the work of the quantity group, 50 pounds of pots rated an A, 40 pounds a B, and so on. Those being graded on quality, however, needed to produce only 1 pot, albeit a perfect one, to get an A. This is linked to eating disorders. I really want to talk about that. I want to talk about my own experience with anorexia, and I'm just sort of trying to work up the courage, and I want to tell my testimony as well, which is like including that. It's quite a thing to tell, though. It's quite difficult to share, especially in like a monologue form. Then again, I'm kind of being chicken about it because I can just share it on a video and never post it. And so I haven't done that. I haven't even tried. So I think, although I have in conversation with other people, sometimes it came to that, and I told them, and, generally the response would be an emotional one from the other person. But I think it's an important story to share, and also touches on subjects that are important to know in life. And, I want to believe that if I tell my story, that it can perhaps help lead other people to good and better things, and possibly provoke their faith. Or at least give them hope. I don't know, but or at least get them thinking about miracles. They do exist. They happen every day, in fact. Anyway, so I just that's instantly what I thought about. But we can all relate to this, in different way. But the scale. I mean, wow. What can I say? Well, came grading time, and a curious fact emerged. The works of the highest quality were all produced by the group being graded for quantity. It seems that while the quantity group was busily churning out piles of work and learning from their mistakes, the quality group had sat theorizing about perfection, and in the end had little more to show for their efforts than grandiose theories and a pile of dead clay. Yeah, I just want to make, it is important to make a distinction, theory versus versus experience, I think. Let's go. If you think good work is somehow synonymous with perfect work, you are headed for big trouble. Inevitably, your work, like preceding syllogism, will be flawed. Why? Because you're a human being, and only human beings, warts and all, make art. Without warts, it is not clear what you would be, but clearly you wouldn't be one of us. That is true. That is so true. You know, to have experienced something like that, it is almost as if you become alien. Nonetheless, the belief persists among some artists and lots of ex-artists that doing art means doing things flawlessly, ignoring the fact that this prerequisite would disqualify most existing works of art. Indeed, it seems vastly more plausible to advance the counter-principle, namely that imperfection is not only a common ingredient in art, but very likely an essential ingredient. Ansel Adams never one to mistake precision for perfection, often recalled an old adage that the perfect is the enemy of the good. Repeat that. Ansel Adams, never one to mistake precision for perfection, often recalled the old adage that the perfect is the enemy of the good. His point being that if he waited for everything in the scene to be exactly right, he'd probably never make a photograph. Fun fact, I studied photography and have my own photography business. It's a bit dormant right now because I'm busy with teaching kids and things like that. So, yeah, but that's fun fact. But, you know, it's fascinating. I love it. I've got a passion for it. Yeah. Adams was right. To require perfection is to invite paralysis. Oh my goodness, that is so true. In fact, I can testify to that. Yo, this is so good. The pattern is predictable. As you see error in what you have done, you steer your work towards what you imagine you can do perfectly. You cling ever more tightly to what you already know you can do, away from risk and exploration, and possibly further from the work of your heart. You find reasons to procrastinate, since to not work is to make mistakes. Believing that artwork should be perfect, you gradually become convinced that you cannot make such work. You are correct. Sooner or later, since you cannot do what you are trying to do, you quit. And in one of those perverse little ironies of life, only the pattern itself achieves perfection. A perfect death spiral. You misdirect your work, you stall, you quit. To demand perfection is to deny your ordinary and universal humanity, as though you would be better off without it. Yet this humanity is an ultimate source of your work. Your perfectionism denies you the very thing you need to get your work done. Getting on with your work requires a recognition that perfection itself is paradoxically a flawed concept. Hear that, hear that, hear that, hear that. Take that in. For Albert Einstein, even the seemingly perfect construct of mathematics yielded to his observation that, as far as the laws of mathematics refer to reality, they are not certain, and as far as they are certain, they do not refer to reality. Oh, that's a good quote. For Charles Darwin, evolution lay revealed when a perfect survival strategy for one generation became, in a changing world, a liability for its offspring. For you, the seed of your next artwork lies embedded in the imperfections of your current piece. Such imperfections or mistakes, if you're feeling particularly depressed about them today, are your guides. Valuable, reliable, objective, non-judgmental guides to matters you need to reconsider or develop further. It is precisely this interaction between the ideal and the real that locks your art into the real world and gives meaning to both. Annihilation. And then after this I will stop the video, just to not make it too long. Annihilation. For most artists, hitting a dry spell in their art making would be a serious blow. For a few, it would amount to annihilation. Some artists identify so closely with their own work that were they cease to produce, they fear they. For most artists, hitting a dry spell in their art making would be a serious blow. For a few, it would amount to annihilation. Some artists identify so closely with their own work that were they to cease producing, they fear they would be nothing, and they would cease existing. In the words of John Barth, it's Scheherazade's terror, the terror that comes from the literal or metaphorical equating of telling stories with living, with life itself. I understand that metaphor to the marrow of my bones. Some avoid this self-imposed abyss by becoming stupendously productive, churning out work in quantities that surprise even close friends and positively unnerve envious peers. They work passionately as if they were possessed, and wouldn't you too if that were all that kept the reaper at bay? Others, no less driven, project instead of certain no-nonsense professionalism, precise, relentless, and narrowly aimed at making art, which indeed they may be very good at. History records that Anthony Trollope methodically drafted exactly 49 pages of a manuscript a week, 7 pages a day, and was so obsessed with keeping to that schedule that if he finished a novel in the morning, he'd pen the title for his next book on a new sheet and plod relentlessly ahead until he'd completed his quota for the day. Sounds a bit like somebody, I know. And from personal experience, the authors can verify that Brett Weston, a virtual case study in annihilation, for decades maintained his home an ongoing exhibition of a dozen or more of his photographs, none of which was ever more than 6 months old. Still, there must be many fates worse than the inability to stop producing art. The artist who fears annihilation may draw the connection between doing and being a little too tight, but this is really just a case of having too much of a good thing. Annihilation is an existential fear, the common but sharply overdrawn fear that some part of you dies when you stop making art. And it's true. Non-artists may not understand that, but artists themselves, especially those who are stuck, understand it all too well. The depth of your need to make things establishes the level of risk in not making them. So I'm gonna stop there since there is another chapter. But the next chapter or subject, it's titled Magic. So that is for the next video. I hope you are having a good day, morning or evening, depending on where you are. And I hope that you got something from this. I definitely did. And I think, I'm glad that I didn't go on too much of a tangent or, but I wanted to. And I think that I'm going to try making a video of my testimony just for me and to practice it, because I believe it can help people, and to keep it to myself is kind of like, why? Okay, bye.